So this dripper was one of my biggest surprises this year and got me very excited for lots of little kind of funny reasons. And one of those reasons is that actually nobody even saw this thing coming. It just kind of came out of nowhere, released by Kalita. And even after it was released, it seems like everybody has just kind of slept on it. It's kind of flown under the radar. And I think part of the reason is because the Kalita flat bottom wave dripper is relatively well known. You know, you have the original stainless steel wave. It's a little bit newer than most people realize. It was released in 2010. There were also the original ceramic and glass versions of these. And at that time, basically the only other pour over options that were available in mainstream were the Hario V60 and the Chemex. Now today, over a decade later, pour over has become kind of a big deal. And there are a ton of options out there when it comes to pour over drippers. And it kind of seems like that more progressive pour over community has kind of moved past the wave and chooses these other fancier, more expensive drippers. They perform differently than some of those classic drippers in different ways. And when these new drippers launch, they tend to do so with a huge dramatic flair, a lot of really high production videos, Kickstarter campaigns, all this sort of thing. And that's partially because the landscape is so saturated, you know, a new product launch needs to make a lot of noise to kind of stand out from the crowd. I've used a lot of these drippers. Many of them are quite good, and I've reviewed a lot of them on my channel, and because they tend to be produced in smaller numbers, they often tend to be quite expensive as well. Then, late last year, Kalita releases these, an update to their ceramic line of drippers. New colors. I thought, okay, cool. Not a lot of fanfare. I got sent a couple of these things from my partners at Espresso Parts, and I thought, they look nice. Cool. Then I used it. And I realized this is a totally different dripper than I was expecting. It performed very well, and I knew right away that it was going to fly under the radar and people were going to miss it. And sure enough, that is what has happened. And what makes it really great is a little bit complicated, but stick with me here. You see the first wave, the stainless wave, it uses this flat bottom shape as opposed to the cone shape of the Hario V60. And the thinking there is that it's going to create an even layer of a coffee bed at the bottom of the brewer, make for a more even and consistent extraction. And it does do that, but these waves do have a problem, and that is that they can tend to clog. Go too fine on your grind, use the wrong kind of grinder, give too much agitation, and sure enough, the brewer is going to restrict the flow a little bit too much. It will start to slow down and you'll stall your brew, end up with a bitter, astringent brew. And the reason why it clogs like that is to do with the design of the bottom in here. There's this little three-pointed shape which is designed to lift the filter away from the holes. It just doesn't work the best all the time. There is a higher end version of this called the Tsubame Wave. It's handmade in the Tsubame region of Japan. It's got this hand-hammered bottom here, kind of with a little bit of a different approach, this little dome shape down here, a little bit bigger holes in the bottom too. And this version does tend to flow a little bit better than the OG stainless wave. It's also quite expensive though. There were also the original ceramic and glass versions of these. This dripper is at an entirely different level. Extremely consistent, fantastic flow, and very forgiving. And the reason is a redesign of the little tiny bits down here at the bottom of the dripper. You see that original three-pointed design, which was designed to lift the filter above those holes, was okay, but the filter could still kind of come down and press over the hole, which would restrict the flow, make for wide, flat areas of contact down in the bottom of the dripper that would essentially prevent the dripper from flowing as well as it could. The new Mino ceramic drippers take a bit of a different approach. They have this little ridge in the center which keeps that center of the filter propped up, and then this circular set of ridges that's broken up by three different holes in the bottom. And what that does is it keeps the whole bottom of the filter elevated away from the flat surface of the bottom while breaking the surface tension of the water underneath the filter, which will help draw the water out and let it flow through the holes. It seems like a minor redesign, but in terms of practically how the dripper actually flows, it is a huge improvement. And it just has kind of gotten missed in the landscape of all the other drippers that are available. But my favorite thing about it is how accessible it is. $38, very much cheaper than a lot of the other Kickstarter drippers out there. For how well it works, for how good it looks, this is just a no-brainer for me. To add on to that, manufacturing and sustainability wise, these things are made in Japan, in the Dachi region. That area is well known for its high quality pottery going back over 1,000 years, if you can believe it. So you're getting a very high quality, very well made product out of Japan. Now, enough talking. I think we should actually just make a coffee with this thing, which is going to lead me to my only negative, or maybe even let's just say consideration with this dripper. If you do a lot of extremely light roasted coffee, or you're very particular with your extractions, you will probably already be thinking this, but preheating this dripper under the tap is going to help. And that's because when you're brewing, especially with lighter roasted coffees, you want the temperature of the brew to be as high as possible. And if you brew with a room temperature or cool dripper, the dripper itself and the thermal mass of this pottery here is going to suck some of that heat out of the brew, which you don't want. So I suggest running it under a tap while you go to grind your coffee and get your brew ready, which is what I'm going to do right now. If you're just getting started with pour over, other things that you want to consider: really good coffee. I'm going to be brewing a higher altitude, lighter roasted Brazil, which we roasted ourselves. And something that a lot of people miss that you're definitely going to want to think about is your water. I use this stuff. It's called Third Wave Water. They're sponsoring this video. This is really cool stuff. It's basically minerals that you add into distilled water to perfectly formulate it for coffee brewing. This is the light roast profile from Third Wave Water. I'm going to use this today. And all you do is get some distilled water, snip the top off this thing, dump it in, shake it up, and you are going to have perfect coffee water. Now, coffee is 98% water. So if you're not loving the flavor of the water that comes out of your tap, you're probably not going to love the flavor of your coffee either. This stuff will also help prevent scale from building up in your kettle or espresso machines. They come in several different formulations, so you can kind of tune it if you like dark, medium, light roast, or if you're using it for espresso. Fantastic stuff. I've used it for years, and the team at Third Wave Water gives all of you 10% off a one-time order using Daddy Got Coffee. If you want to stock up on this stuff, you've never used the code, great opportunity, highly recommend. All right, let's preheat this dripper and grind up my coffee. All right, so the dripper is nice and hot. I'm gonna put my filter in here, and I don't really think you need to pre-wet your filter, especially if your dripper is already hot. But one thing you'll notice is the filter will kind of pop out of here a little bit. So I actually pre-wet my filter just to get it to stay down properly in the dripper like that. And I'm going to add my coffee. I'm using 16 grams of this Brazil, and I've heated my kettle to 94 degrees Celsius. Now, the thing I love about this dripper is you don't even really need to pay attention that much. You can just kind of shoot for an overall ratio of water to ground coffee. I'm going to use about 16:1, and things will probably work out. But I will give you the recipe that I use just for your notes. I like nice, round, even numbers to help keep things brainless and easy to remember. So with 16 grams of coffee, I'm going to shoot for 250 mils of water, and I'm going to break that into 5 nice, easy pours of 50 mils. And the first pour is going to be what's called a bloom. And I'm going to put that first 50 mil of water in, try and get all those beans wet, and give it a little swirl for good measure just to make sure everything has gotten hit. And I'm going to let it sit for a full minute. And what that does is it allows that water to get into those coffee grounds, fully saturate them, which will make the extraction of my later pours a lot more effective. Nothing really magical about blooming. That's all it's intended to do. Now, once it gets to that minute, I'm going to do 4 subsequent pours of 50 mils each, just going in gentle little circles here. I'm going to try and pour for 10 seconds and then let it rest for 10 seconds. So I'm going to be going in about 20-second intervals. So 1 minute, 120, 140, and 2 minutes. And the water level will creep up just a little bit with each pour, trying to agitate the grounds, but not too much. And I'll keep going until I've completed the final pour around 2 minutes and 10 seconds. Then once I've completed my final pour, I'll just let it draw down on its own. Now you can see the dripper is flowing fantastically. I have been giving it a little bit of agitation in there, but we're still flowing great. Now, depending on the coffee I'm using, I'll shoot for a total drawdown time or a finish time of between 2.5 minutes and 3.5 minutes. My favorite brews tend to be just on the short side of the 3-minute mark, and that looks like about where we're going to time out on this one. Perfect. So right around 3 minutes. Now, one other hack that I recommend before you pour a pour over is that you either mix it or swirl it. And the reason for that is when you first start brewing, you're going to get a very different flavor of coffee extracted first than what comes out at the end. So you want to make sure that that is all homogenized and mixed up well before you serve it. And let's see how this tastes. That is really tasty. So this is actually the first coffee that Sarah and I are roasting and making available publicly here locally to where we are. It's from the Minas Gerais region, which is a well-known growing region for nice Brazilian coffee. And I get off this a lot of caramel and apple, almost like a candy apple actually. Sweet, smooth coffee, very crowd pleasing. Now, if you end up with one of these things and you want to hack your brew or you're not quite getting the results that you're looking for, again, you want to start with good coffee and good water. From there, if it seems to be brewing too slow and or coming out very bitter, you want to go a little bit coarser on your grind. If it seems to be brewing too fast or coming out very sour, go a little bit finer on your grind. There's also a couple little hacks that you can do when you're actually mid-brew to try and get a little bit of a better flavor. If you're noticing that things are flowing really fast and you're thinking that this brew is going to end a little bit early, just take those pours and spread them out a little bit longer to give the coffee a little bit more contact time. More agitation can help too. And if it seems to be brewing very slowly, like you do your bloom and it still is not fully drained by the end of the bloom, you really want to add as little agitation as possible. Now that really is for kind of fine tuning, like 201 type stuff when it comes to doing a pour over. I've gifted these things to friends and family, including those without any pour over experience. They don't do the preheating. They have an entry level grinder. They're not following a specific recipe or technique, and it just turns out good. And they're very happy with their brew. Comes in lots of great looks, so you can kind of match things to your own decor. Performs great, and my favorite thing, very accessible from a price standpoint. And still very slept on overall when it comes to pour over drippers. I really like these things, but I want to know what you think about the Kalita Wave. Can this redesign bring the Wave back to relevance, or is there just too many better options out there for you? If you're an owner especially, I would love to hear from you on this. This one really surprised me once I got digging into it. Let me know your thoughts on the new Wave. I hope your next cup of coffee is fantastic, and we'll see you next time.